The historiography of early Islam refers to the study of the early history of Islam during the 7th century, from Muhammad's first revelations in AD 610 until the disintegration of the Rashidun Caliphate in AD 661, and arguably throughout the 8th century and the duration of the Umayyad Caliphate, terminating in the incipient Islamic Golden Age around the beginning of the 9th century. Traditional Muslim historiography, science of biography, science of hadith, and isnad Muslim historical traditions first began developing from the earlier 7th century with the reconstruction of Muhammad's life following his death. Because narratives regarding Muhammad and his companions came from various sources, it was necessary to verify which sources were more reliable. In order to evaluate these sources, various methodologies were developed, such as the science of biography, science of hadith, and isnad. These methodologies were later applied to other historical figures in the Muslim world. Ilm Rijal is the science of biography, especially as practiced in Islam, where it was first applied to the Sirah, the life of the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, and then the lives of the four rightly guided caliphs who expanded Islamic dominance rapidly. Since validating the sayings of Muhammad is a major study, accurate biography has always been of great interest to Muslim biographers, who accordingly attempted to sort out facts from accusations, bias from evidence, etc. The earliest surviving Islamic biography is Ibn Ishaq Sirat Rasul Allah, written in the 8th century, but known to us only from later quotes and recensions. The science of hadith is the process that Muslim scholars use to evaluate hadith. The classification of hadith into Sahih, Hasan and Da'if was firmly established by Ali ibn al-Madini. Later, al-Madini's student Muhammad al-Bukhari authored a collection that he believed contained only Sahih hadith, which is now known as the Sahih Bukhari. Al-Bukhari's historical methods of testing hadiths and isnads is seen as the beginning of the method of citation and a precursor to the scientific method which was developed by later Muslim scientists. I. Ahmad writes, "The vagueness of ancient historians about the sources stands in stark contrast to the insistence that scholars such as Bukhari and Muslim manifested in knowing every member in a chain of transmission and examining the reliability. They published the findings, which were then subjected to additional scrutiny by future scholars for consistency with each other and the Quran." Quote, other famous Muslim historians who studied the science of biography or science of hadith included Urwa ibn Zubair, Wahb ibn Munabi, Ibn Ishaq al-Waqidi, Ibn Hisham al-Makrasi, and Ibn Hajar Asqalani, among others. Historiography, cultural history, and philosophy of history. The first detailed studies on the subject of historiography itself and the first critiques on historical methods appeared in the works of the Arab Muslim historian and historiographer Ibn Khaldun, who is regarded as the father of historiography, cultural history, and the philosophy of history, especially for his historiographical writings in the Muqaddimah and Kitab al-Abar. His Muqaddimah also laid the groundwork from the observation of the role of state, communication, propaganda and systematic bias in history, and he discussed the rise and fall of civilizations. Franz Rosenthal wrote in The History of Muslim Historiography, Muslim historiography has at all times been united by the closest ties with the general development of scholarship in Islam, and the position of historical knowledge in Muslim education has exercised a decisive influence upon the intellectual level of historici writing. the Muslims achieved a definite advance beyond previous historical writing in the sociology and the Muqaddimah. Ibn Khaldun warned of 7 mistakes that he thought that historians regularly committed. In this criticism, he approached the past as strange and in need of interpretation. The originality of Ibn Khaldun was to claim that a cultural difference of another age must govern the evaluation of relevant historical material, to distinguish the principles according to which it might be possible to attempt the evaluation, and lastly, to feel the need for experience, in addition to rational principles, in order to assess a culture of the past. Ibn Khaldun often criticized idle superstition and uncritical acceptance of historical data. As a result, he introduced a scientific method to the study of history, which was considered something new to his age, and he often referred to it as his new science, now associated with historiography. His historical method also laid the groundwork from the observation of the role of state, communication, propaganda and systematic bias in history, and he is thus considered to be the father of historiography, or the father of the philosophy of history. World history. Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari is known for writing a detailed and comprehensive chronicle of Mediterranean and Middle Eastern history in his History of the Prophets and Kings in 915. Abu al-Hasan Ali al-Masudi, known as the Herodotus of the Arabs, was the first to combine history and scientific geography in a large-scale work. Umayyad Caliphate al-Jalahir, a book on world history. Until the 10th century, history most often meant political and military history, but this was not so with Persian historian Biruni. In his Kitab fi Tahqiq Mali Hind, he did not record political and military history in any detail, but wrote more on India's cultural, scientific, social and religious history. Along with his researches on India, Biruni discussed more on his idea of history in his chronological work The Chronology of the Ancient Nations. Famous Muslim historian Zawar ibn Zubair Hadith of Umar's speech of forbidding muta. Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri Hadith of Umar's speech of forbidding muta. Hadith of prohibition of muta at Kaaba. Ibn Ishaq Sara Rasul Allah. Imam Malik al-Muwatta. Al-Waqidi Book of History and Campaigns. Ali ibn al-Madani The Book of Knowledge about the Companions. Ibn Hisham Sara Rasul Allah. Dulnan al-Masri. Muhammad al-Bukhari Sahih Bukhari. Muslim b. Al-Hajjaj Sahih Muslim. Ibn Majah Sunan Ibn Majah. Abu Daud Sunan Abi Daud. Al-Tirmidhi Sunan Al-Tirmidhi. Abu al-Hasan Ali al-Masudi Mujaddid Ijtihad Madan al-Jalahir. Ibn Washir Nabati in Agriculture Kitab Shawk al-Mustafhim. Al-Nasa'i Sunan al-Sufra. Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari History of the Prophets and Kings Tafsir al-Tabari. Al-Baladuri Kitab Fatah al-Budn. Genealogies of the Nobles. Hakim al-Nashaburi al-Mustadrak ala al-Sahihain. Abu Rayhan al-Biruni Indica. History of Mahmud of Ghazni and his father. History of Khawarizm. Abd al-Latif al-Baghdadi. Ibn Abi Zarrud al-Qirtas. Al-Dahabi Major History of Islam. Tawqas al-Mustadrak Tadkirat al-Hafaz al-Kamal Fimar Rifat al-Rijal. Ibn Khaldun Muqaddimah Kitab al-Abar. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani Fath al-Bari Tadab al-Tadab Finding the Truth in Judging the Companions Bul al-Maram. Modern academic scholarship. The beginnings. The earliest academic scholarship on Islam arose in Western countries and tended to be Christian and Jewish translators and commentators. They translated the easily available Sunni texts from Arabic into European languages including German, Italian, French, or English, then summarized and commented in a fashion that was often hostile to Islam. Notable Christian scholars include William Muir, Reinhard Dozy, Die Israelite and Zu Mecca, David Samuel Margoliouth, William St. Clair Tisdall, Leon Catani, Alphonse Mingana. All these scholars worked in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Another pioneer of Islamic studies, Abraham Geiger, was a prominent Jewish rabbi and approached Islam from that standpoint in his Was hat Muhammad aus dem Judentum auf genommen. Geiger's themes were continued in Rabbi Abraham I. Katch's Judaism and the Quran, establishment of academic research. Other scholars, notably those in the German tradition, took a more neutral view. The late 19th century scholar Julius Wellhausen is a prime example. They also started cautiously to question the truth of the Arabic texts. They took a source-critical approach, trying to sort the Islamic texts into elements to be accepted as historically true, and elements to be discarded as polemic or bias fiction. These scholars might include Michael Yandigo Ayer, Theodor Noldake, Ignaz Goldziher, Henry Lammens, Arthur Jeffrey, H.A.R. Gibb, Joseph Schacht, Montgomery Watt. The Revisionist Challenge. In the 1970s, the revisionist school of Islamic studies, or what has been described as a wave of skeptical scholars, challenged a great deal of the received wisdom in Islamic studies. They argued that the Islamic historical tradition had been greatly corrupted in transmission. They tried to correct or reconstruct the early history of Islam from other, presumably more reliable, sources such as coins, inscriptions, and non-Islamic sources. The oldest of this group was John Wansborough. Wansborough's works were widely noted, but perhaps not widely read. Donner says, Wansborough's awkward prose style, diffuse organization, and tendency to rely on suggestive implication rather than tight argument have elicited exasperated comment from many reviewers. Wansborough's skepticism influenced a number of younger scholars, including Martin Hines, Patricia Crone, Michael Cook. In 1977, Crone and Cook published Hagarism, The Making of the Islamic World, which argued that the early history of Islam is a myth, generated after the conquests of Egypt, Syria, and Persia to prop up the new Arab regimes in those lands and give them a solid ideological foundation. According to the theory, the Quran was composed later, rather than early, and the Arab conquests may have been the cause, rather than the consequence, of Islam. The main evidence adduced for this thesis was based upon a contemporary body of non-Muslim sources to many early Islamic events. If such events could not be supported by outside evidence, then they should be dismissed as myth. Crone and Cook's more recent work has involved intense scrutiny of early Islamic sources, but not the total rejection. In 1972, a cache of ancient Qurans in a mosque in Sana'a, Yemen was discovered, commonly known as the Sana'a manuscripts. The German scholar Gerd Arpin has been investigating these Quran fragments for years. His research team made 35,000 microfilm photographs of the manuscripts, which he dated to early part of the 8th century. Arpin has not published the entirety of his work, but noted unconventional verse orderings, minor textual variations, and rare styles of orthography. He also suggested that some of the parchments were palimpsests which had been reused. Arpin believed that this implied an evolving text as opposed to a fixed one. Karl-Heinz Ohlig researched as well Christian, Jewish roots of the Quran and its related texts. He sees the term Muhammad itself as part of that tradition. Contemporary scholars have begun to turn to the study of the Islamic sources in a skeptical mood. They tend to use the histories rather than the hadith, and to analyze the histories in terms of the tribal and political affiliations of the narrators, thus making it easier to guess in which direction the material might have been slanted. Notable scholars include Fred M. Donner, Wilfred Madelung, Gerald Horting, Jonathan Berkey, Andrew Rippin, G. H. A. Duinball. Scholars combining traditional and academic scholarship. A few scholars have managed to bridge the divide between Islamic and Western-style secular scholarship. They have completed both Islamic and Western academic training. Sherman Jackson, Fazlur Rahman, Suleiman Bashir. Bibliography. Donner, Fred. Narratives of Islamic Origins, The Beginnings of Islamic Historical Writing. Darwin Press, 1998. Hoyland, Robert G. Seeing Islam as Others Saw It, A Survey and Evaluation of Christian, Jewish and Zoroastrian Writings on Early Islam. Darwin Press, 1997. Madelung, Wilfred. The Succession to Muhammad, A Study of the Early Caliphate. Cambridge University Press. ISBN 0-521-64696-0.